This is actually just one small piece of the information that's available. Has anybody here read the IWG? It's really exciting. I've read it. Actually, when you're researching this issue, it is kind of exciting in a weird way because it's really filled with very interesting information. I'm in hopes that someone will translate this to Japanese so that Japanese journalists can read it. And one thing that's amazing, by the way, about Japan is that much of this movement is, as you know, being done by housewives. Such a powerful force. So having this in Japanese in their hands, you know, it's a force builder in trying to tell the truth about what's going on. As I mentioned earlier, this is a geopolitical move. It has nothing really to do with comfort women. If anybody really cared about human rights of anybody, they wouldn't be concerned about something that did not happen more than 7 decades ago. And for some reason, people still find a way to throw rocks at Japan. Interesting, you see, though, with these various attacks on Japan, again, it's about the bases and it's about strategic interest, as you can see. One thing that's interesting about this slide is you can see that they're trying to split even Okinawan women from Japanese women, as if there's something separate. You know, obviously Okinawa is part of Japan, but still they managed to make it look like it's something different. So again, the footprints here of something larger afoot are just obvious. They're everywhere. It's become a cornerstone issue. As you can see, it's become a major issue. It's in the news literally every day. While China works on its aircraft carriers, they're trying to keep Article 9 as it is. While China builds its military, they're trying to keep Japan as weak as possible. Everybody here probably already knows this. And as you can see, it's created a victim culture in Korea and China. Everybody thinks they're a victim. And it's interesting, too, how the Chinese pretend that they rescued the comfort women. They could teach Disney World how to make fiction movies. We believe, after looking at this quite a lot, that eventually the target is going to be the United States as well on the comfort women issue. As you know, 122 women in Korea are suing the Korean government now. This is some back feed that the Korean government probably did not expect. And we believe after some period of time, we don't know when, they're going to start doing the same with the United States. Basically, Korea walked into their own ambush, and the United States is following them. We'll go through an overview, though, so that you understand some of what's going on with the IWG. The history of the IWG is almost as interesting as the IWG itself. One of the things that's interesting about the history is that at the meetings, when they're working on the IWG, you'll see that, for instance, Global Alliance members are mentioned at times. They were there at the meetings. They were actually influencing people, lawmakers in the United States, to actually push this thing forward. Now, one thing that's very important is that many of the documents had already been declassified. In fact, most had already been declassified, but the IWG had another 8 million pages declassified. 1.2 million from the OSS, that's the predecessor of the CIA. And you can see the other figures there as well. But also the Navy was involved, the Marines, so they really had access to records from all the service branches. It was a tremendous effort. And again, the history of the report spans back quite a while. But you can see, for instance, on 2003, Global Alliance is mentioned here. They were all over this thing. It's interesting, too, how they focus on Japan, and that's the reason that this... They focus on Japan more than anybody. And one thing that's very important is, when it came to Nazi war crimes, there's enough evidence to fill up this entire library. Yet, after this tremendous effort, with tens of millions of dollars spent, we didn't find anything on the comfort women. Notice these names here. You might want to write them down for future research. Maloney and Pelosi, these are key figures who are involved in this issue. And you can see on the bottom line here, expresses the sense of Congress that foreign nations, in particular Japan, and this gets more and more interesting, actually. Notice on the bottom of this slide, again, expresses the sense of Congress that foreign nations, and in particular Japan, should make every effort possible to cooperate with Nazi and Japanese war criminal records interagency working group in carrying out its duties. This is very important. This is important because there's a false narrative that Japan was not helpful and that Japanese archives were not accessible. So you can see, actually this slide talks about that as well. The idea that Japanese records were not accessible is completely false. In fact, we had access to the Japanese war records and had gone through those with 2,600 interpreters. We had access to the Japanese war records. They were in the United States. And, we had the records that were captured and used 2,600 to translate those documents. The U.S. translators did, yeah. And so you can see here some of the language. There was just a paucity there was very few records at all about Japanese war crimes. I mean, we knew war crimes happened, of course, and some records were found, but nothing on sex slaves, nothing like that whatsoever. Now, some people say that the IWG, the ones who have heard of the IWG, they say that the only thing that the IWG did was declassify the records. That's not true. In fact, they went through the records in detail, and they identified the records and cataloged and inventoried those records. So they actually did go through the records. And at one point, they actually apologized in the final report to Global Alliance. I was actually on an airplane reading the IWG report and read the apology to the Global Alliance. I was stunned that after we spent tens of millions of dollars on this report, we're apologizing to the Chinese because we can't slam Japan with it.